What happens when one of Hollywood's most unpredictable actors agrees to an interview with a news anchor known for his tough, unyielding style? What began as a typical morning on Good Morning America quickly spiraled into chaos, culminating in security rushing to the set and Nicolas Cage storming off in a moment that would be remembered as one of the most explosive interviews in morning television history. Before we dive into the full story, don't forget to subscribe and drop a comment because this story gets absolutely wild. The green room of Good Morning America was alive with its usual pre-show hustle and bustle. Producers darted back and forth, clutching clipboards and juggling last-minute logistics. Makeup artists worked diligently, putting final touches on the day's guests, their brushes moving deftly across faces under the harsh fluorescent lighting. In the corner sat Nicolas Cage, quietly focused, flipping through what appeared to be carefully handwritten notes. His publicist, a sharply dressed woman named Miranda, paced nearby, speaking softly but firmly to a production assistant who seemed eager to listen. "Mr. Cage is here to discuss his upcoming film and his recent charitable work with veterans," Miranda repeated for what felt like the third or fourth time, as if hoping to ensure the message was clear and would not be ignored. The tone was calm but insistent, no surprises, no detours into personal or controversial territory. "Just the film and the charity." The production assistant nodded eagerly. "Absolutely. We've got everything mapped out perfectly. George is really looking forward to this interview." But George Stephanopoulos had other plans. In his private office, away from the pre-show commotion, George sat hunched over a thick folder, a far cry from the friendly morning face he would soon present to the camera. His assistant had compiled a dossier that looked less like an interview prep and more like an investigative file. Tabloid stories, court documents, tax filings, pages upon pages detailing every messy chapter of Cage's life, past financial troubles, multiple marriages, and what some critics described as erratic and self-destructive career choices. "This is good material," George murmured, highlighting sections with a bright yellow marker. "Real journalism means asking the hard questions." His assistant shifted nervously, sensing the growing tension. "Sir, the publicist made it very clear they want to keep this about the new film and the charity work. Nothing personal." George looked up with a cold smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Since when do publicists dictate editorial decisions? This is Good Morning America, not some fluff entertainment show. Cage is a public figure. The public deserves the truth even if it's uncomfortable." 20 minutes before airtime, Miranda knocked on George's office door and entered cautiously, her eyes scanning the scattered papers on his desk. "Mr. Stephanopoulos," she began carefully, "I just wanted to confirm that we're sticking to the agreed topics." Her voice was steady but firm. George didn't look up, fingers still flipping through the dossier. "We'll see where the conversation goes naturally." Miranda frowned. "I'm sorry, but that's not what we discussed. Mr. Cage is doing you a favor by appearing on such short notice. The least you can do is honor the agreement." George finally met her gaze, the smile vanishing as his expression hardened. "Miss Torres, isn't it? Let me explain something about journalism. We don't make agreements that compromise our integrity. If Mr. Cage can't handle honest questions, maybe he shouldn't do interviews." Miranda's voice remained professional but unwavering. "There's a difference between honest journalism and ambush tactics. Nicholas came here in good faith." George gathered his papers and stood. "And so did I now. If you'll excuse me, I have a show to prepare for." The tension in the air was thick as Miranda returned to the green room, where Nicholas was examining his reflection in a small mirror, meticulously adjusting his tie. There was a quiet intensity in his eyes, an expression born from years of adapting to unpredictable situations. "How are you feeling?" Miranda asked, her concern barely hidden. Nicholas turned toward her, his voice calm but resolute. "I'm always ready for whatever comes. That's what this business teaches you, adaptability." Miranda hesitated. "George seemed a little eager when I spoke to him earlier." "Eager how?" Nicholas asked, raising an eyebrow. Before she could answer, a production assistant approached. "Mr. Cage, we're ready for you on set." The walk from the green room to the studio felt longer than usual. Overhead, the stage lights blazed fiercely, cameras tracking every step with mechanical precision. The iconic anchor desk sat center stage, with George already behind it, shuffling notes and a final review. His smile was bright, practice perfect. For the cameras, but behind it lurked a calculating gaze, one that had already mapped out the battle ahead. Nicholas took his seat opposite George, clicking his microphone into place with the effortless grace of a seasoned professional. The countdown began. "Good morning. I'm George Stephanopoulos, and joining me now is Academy Award-winning actor Nicolas Cage." The cameras rolled as George flashed his polished smile, Nicholas, thank you for being here. Thank you for having me, George. Always a pleasure. George's smile widened. So, let's talk about your new film. But first, I have to ask, you've had quite a journey in Hollywood, some might say a roller coaster ride. Nicholas maintained a calm composure. Every actor's career has its peaks and valleys. That's the nature of creative work, right? George's tone sharpened. But your valleys have been quite public, haven't they? The financial troubles, tax issues, some questionable film choices. A noticeable hush fell over the studio. Camera operators exchanged quick glances. Miranda stepped slightly forward from the wings, her face taut with concern. Nicholas leaned back, his expression cooling. George, I thought we were here to discuss my current project and my work with veterans. George pressed, flipping to a marked page in his folder. We will get to that, but our viewers want the real Nicolas Cage. You've made headlines. Beyond your acting, the multiple marriages, exotic purchases, legal battles. Nicholas's voice took on a familiar edge, the intense, controlled tone fans recognized from his films. I think you're mistaken about the nature of this interview. George's eyes sparkled with triumph. Come on, Nicholas, you're a public figure. These are legitimate questions. Don't your fans deserve transparency? The air thickened with tension. Nicholas shifted in his chair. His famous intensity flickered like lightning behind gathering storm clouds. What I think, Nicholas said slowly, is there's a difference between journalism and exploitation. Right now, I'm trying to figure out which one this is. George's smile faltered briefly before returning with renewed determination. Exploitation's a strong word. I'm simply asking questions any responsible journalist would ask. For instance, you filed for bankruptcy, yet you continue to make what some call unusual purchases, a pyramid, shrunken heads, a private island. How do you reconcile that with owing millions to the IRS? Nicholas's jaw tightened. Behind the scenes, Miranda frantically gestured to the production team. But George's producer shook his head, clearly relishing the drama. George, let me stop you right there, Nicholas said, voice dropping to that low, gravelly register. That had made him famous. First, I've never filed for bankruptcy. That's factually incorrect. Second, my personal finances, purchases, private life, these aren't topics I agreed to discuss. George made a theatrical show of consulting his notes again. But when you owe taxpayers money, doesn't that make your spending habits a matter of public interest? Nicholas's eyebrows shot up. What documents? Did you hire a private investigator to dig through my records? Because that would be interesting. George faltered. These are publicly available court filings. No, George, they're not, Nicholas replied sharply. Court filings show liens, not private purchases. So, where did you get info about comic book purchases and private transactions? George shuffled papers, suddenly less certain. Our research team is thorough. Your research team, or your tabloid contacts? Nicholas pressed. Sounds like you bought information from sources who had no right to sell it. The studio audience, initially entertained by the conflict, began sensing something darker beneath George's tactics. Whispers rippled among the small crowd of staff and guests. Trying to regain control, George said, Nicholas, I think you're deflecting from real issues. You've made choices putting you in financial jeopardy, yet you live extravagantly. Extravagantly. Nicholas's voice rose slightly. George, do you know what I did last month? I visited wounded veterans at Walter Reed Medical Center, not for cameras or publicity. I spent my own money bringing gift packages to soldiers who sacrificed their bodies for this country. But that wasn't the story George wanted to tell. His producer signaled frantically from behind the cameras, but George ignored it. That's admirable, Nicholas, he said, but it doesn't address financial irresponsibility. Nicholas stood partially, gripping his chair arms. Let me tell you about financial responsibility, George. I've employed hundreds of people, crew assistants, drivers, security, housekeepers, people with families who depend on the work I create. When I take a role, even in a film you might consider beneath me, I'm not just earning money for myself, I'm creating jobs. George sensed he was losing control of the narrative and decided to land what he thought would be a knockout punch. But Nicholas, let's talk about some of those roles. The Wicker Man, Ghost Rider, Spirit of Vengeance films critics called career lows. Were you just taking any role for the paycheck? The question hung like a loaded gun. Nicholas stared long and hard. The studio temperature seemed to drop. Did you just insult my work, George? I'm asking about your artistic choices. No, you're not, Nicholas replied. You're repeating lazy criticism from people who've never stepped on a film set, regurgitating bloggers' opinions who think they understand acting. George struggled.